at the very core of human existence is a reality so uncomfortable that many people in this life never actually face it. And that reality is that most people, even as adults, would prefer not to have to deal with the truth that they live in. Now, I'm South African, so this is perhaps more obvious to me than to people in more functional countries. But the reality of South African life is that we have, for example, no political leaders who have any real power who actually seek to serve the people. And this is not just a theory of mine, this is observably true because the core of South African society has now been so fully compromised that politicians engage in corruption out in the open and they barely try to hide it because they know that regardless of what they do or how much damage they cause, even if they end up in court, all that is a minor inconvenience because in South Africa, the truly powerful face no real consequences, regardless of how many lives they ruin. Now, I know that this is also true in other countries. My point is simply that it is most obvious in South Africa because it is done so openly and without apology. And this extends across the political elite. I don't care if a politician has the same skin color as me, or maybe sometimes says things I dislike. The fact is, the political class in South Africa and around the world have far more in common with each other than they do with any of us. And that is one of the more discomforting facts of this situation. But it extends further than that because people don't want to accept the truth in any facet of life. If you think about social media, for example, what is the main metric that drives social media? It is not truth, it is engagement and screen time. All of these platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, their whole point is to keep you engaged with your screen for as long as they possibly can so that you can be fed ads as often as possible. And so, truth is not a reliable metric for getting you to remain engaged. What these platforms will do is to feed you whatever they can see grab your attention the most. It doesn't matter whether the thing grabbing your attention is good for you or even has any basis in reality. All that matters to these platforms is that you keep scrolling and keep visiting the websites that pay them for ad space. Truth has become kind of a foreign concept in our society because right now, as I'm recording this video on my phone, if I choose to, when I upload it, there are any number of camera filters that I can apply to make myself look different. One of the reasons that I record videos on my phone like this instead of using a camera is that I'm not trying to impress you with editing. I did that previously because I've been making videos for a long time. I used to spend almost more time editing videos than I did in recording them. But I realized that, at least for me, chasing numbers and chasing view counts and chasing subscribers isn't really the point because I don't say things that are popular within the mainstream, particularly not as a white South African. My whole goal in as far as it is possible to do, because I am just a limited human, is to tell the truth and to say what I believe to be true as clearly and as articulately as I possibly can. That's all I'm trying to do. But something I've noticed is that you can't make somebody face the truth unless they themselves are ready for it and are willing to accept it. A mistake I made many times over the years, which I have just recently decided to stop making, is that I used to believe that if you confronted people with enough facts and data, they would naturally have to come around to your point of view, a point of view that aligns with observable reality. What it took me far too long to realize is that humanity is not driven by truth. As much as we like to think of ourselves as modern evolved beings, that's not what we are. Truth is not the highest order that motivates our lives. We are driven by narratives, essentially stories, and most of those stories for us are built into us from a very early age. Early childhood is when it starts. And so when truth comes in and contradicts the narrative that our minds are based on and have been built on basically since we were babies, for most people, that sensation of the gap between observable reality and the story we were raised believing, that gap is so uncomfortable that it makes people angry, often to the point of being willing to commit violence in order to defend their belief in whatever story they hold most dear. That is the root of most problems, not just in South Africa, although that is a big problem here, but it's also a massive problem in the world. Because I think that the people who are able to control our lives basically do so because they understand that if you can manipulate the story people believe, then you have the power to control them. There are many books and movies about this very issue, and it's a story, ironically enough, that filmmakers and authors keep telling people at least once every generation. It's one of the oldest stories that has ever existed. But the reason that it keeps being told, and the reason that entertainers, at least entertainers who have creative ability and merit, the reason entertainers keep telling this story is that human beings constantly need to be reminded that the truth is complex and is a lot more complex than the simple narratives we are raised on. And I think that one of the reasons so few people are willing to look the truth dead in the face, as it were, is that knowing the truth or facing it often doesn't make your life any happier and usually actually has the opposite effect. Because when you start to pay attention to the real reasons, or at least you try to pay attention to the real reasons why things are the way they are, you are more likely to feel hopeless than you are to feel empowered. Because you realize that those who are really in charge of the world are far more powerful than you. They will not face any consequences for their wrongdoing, and there's basically nothing you can do about it. And given that, I can understand why a lot of people would prefer to stay comfortable within whatever story they've grown up inside. I get it. My curse is that my mind simply won't allow me to do that because due to my physical disability, quadriplegic cerebral palsy, all my life I've had a lot of time to think about things and to read and to study humanity and the history of why people do the things they do. So I, in a sense, am not capable of ignoring the truth when I see it. And I suffer for that because I know that if I could just pretend everything is all right, I would be a much happier person. But that's just not how my life has played out. Anyway, I think I'll stop rambling here for now. I hope that if you watched for this long, you got something of value out of everything I've said. And yes, I hope that wherever you are in the world watching this, you look after yourself and you try to do things that align with the truth as best as you are able to perceive it.